Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 248 called Mara Smith. This podcast is sponsored by RECEPTIVA-DX. RECEPTIVA-DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive RECEPTIVA-DX test is endometriosis with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, RECEPTIVA-DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about RECEPTIVA-DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile AF listeners are getting $75 off the RECEPTIVA-DX test. So all you have to do is go to RECEPTIVADX.com or download the app RECEPTIVA-DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, RECEPTIVA-DX. This episode is sponsored by Berry Fertility. Guys, as we all know, starting your fertility journey can be a big and deeply personal moment, but that doesn't mean you have to go it alone. Introducing the Berry Fertility app, a free way to manage your fertility treatments, including egg freezing, IVF, and embryo transfers, all in one place. The Berry app does a ton of things. It can help you understand the stages of your treatment, look up information about your medications, and set reminders for your doses and appointments. You'll also find simple to follow injection videos, tutorials, and articles with pro tips on how to manage your injections. Oh my God, this is something I so wish I had when I was going through it. The Berry team is always available to provide support and answer your questions. It's 100% free to use, and you can find it in the Apple App Store. Try Berry Fertility, the trusted partner for every fertility journey. Thanks, Berry. All right, guys. So my guest today is my friend Mara Smith, and I met her through the Hey Mama community because she is a fellow mama founder. She actually founded this incredible tequila company called Inspiro Tequila. We're going to talk about that a little bit on the show, but she's mostly going to talk about her family building journey, which was her doing IVF over 20 years ago. So it's pretty interesting to hear what the landscape was like that long ago, 20 years ago. So much has changed. Obviously, IVF is just over 40 years old. So a lot has changed since then as well. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about her having her twins through IVF. And then we're going to talk about what happened when she realized she was not quite done building her family. So it's a really interesting story. She's a wonderful, brilliant person. Thank you, Mara, for sharing your story. And without further ado, this is Mara's infertility story. Hello, Mara Smith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Allie?
Good. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I got to meet you at our Chicago IRL event. You brought your really delicious Inspiro tequila. It was so good. And we'll talk about that and how you started this brand and why and all that. But first, I want to get into your family building journey. So tell me about growing up. Did you always want to be a mom?
Yes, I think I always knew that. In fact, it's kind of funny. Not only did I want to be a mom, I wanted to be a twin mom, which is very interesting. I remember in high school, you got these eggs, they were just the shells of the eggs, the hollow eggs that you had to take care of to see how you would take care of
totally
whatever,
in home ec class. Yes.
And you randomly got assigned, and I was assigned boy-girl twins. And I was like, oh my, and I was so excited that I had twin eggs, and two sets of twins were my best friends growing up. And I always wanted to be a twin, and I want to have twins. So it's kind of funny. It's really ironic that later in life I had boy-girl twins. I always think about that I had these eggs that were, I guess it was meant to be. So.
That's so cool. You manifested it. Tell me about when you met your husband, and did you guys start talking about family building or what you wanted your family to look like?
No, because I met my husband in high school. So no, we were not at all thinking about family building. Then we went to separate colleges. Then I went to law school. So it was not even on the radar.
Okay.
Also, one thing that was never on the radar was the fact like, I was really myopically focused on like my career.
You
Going
were.
on
What did
law
you want to
school.
do?
Well, I always knew I want to
Want
be
to
a
be a
lawyer. I wanted to
lawyer?
be a Supreme Court justice actually as a young girl, because I guess I wanted to like a, job for life, but I knew I was
That
going to go
is
to law
so
school.
cool.
Yeah. So I studied like in very intensely. I knew I wanted to go to law school. I knew after law school I was going to work at a big law firm. So it actually was like not on my radar because I was so focused on my career. Then what happened is when I was at my law firm, I worked for like a really large law firm in Chicago. Then I started thinking about I'd been married for a number of years. I'd been there for years at the law firm. I started thinking about, okay, I want to start a family. And that's when I realized, oh, how am I going to possibly like have this job and start a family? When I was at the law firm, there were no female partners in my entire department. So
Wow.
I had no role models to look at like how you can work at like a big law firm life and manage family. And the options at that time were really just to go part-time, which for me would mean being taken off the partnership track, which is not something, I mean, I love my job, but if I was going to do it, I wanted to like really be able to like progress.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be taking off the partnership track. You wouldn't get like the fun, sexy deals. You get kind of like the more mundane work, which I like doing the big fun deals.
Right. Of course.
And you really get paid for part-time work, but you're really kind of still working full-time as far as like in a large law firm. So I need to see a lot of options. So that's actually when I really started thinking seriously about, okay, I want to start a family. I decided to go the corporate route and I moved jobs and changed careers. And I went into corporate strategy at a Fortune 500 company, thinking that that would allow me to like manage it better.
Right. So did you and your husband date in high school? I know you said you met in high school.
We did. We started dating
That's so
senior
funny. Same with
year.
me.
That is so
And then we
funny.
went to two
Yeah.
different colleges as well, and then got back together later.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay. So then you went on, you kind of pivoted like career wise, right? Then when did you guys get married and start like in earnest thinking about family building?
Yes. So we got married right when I started at a law firm, like out of law school. So
Gotcha.
we had been married. So I'd been married that whole time working at a law firm. Then I worked. My husband then went back to business school after he worked. So like it was kind of by the time then we're like, oh, I better start thinking about this. I want to have kids. And that's when I like changed jobs. I'm like, okay, I'm going to find a job that will be more conducive to having a family and working. Well, I mean, it's the best laid plans. Nothing ever goes according to plan, right?
100%.
So,
Yep.
I moved to corporate strategy and then discovered, even though, I'd started the process, did not realize it was going to be such a long, a long process as far as like actually getting to the point of having a family and getting pregnant. So that was just a long, we had gone through, many different attempts at everything. And I was doing all things, acupuncture, everything, trying naturally, then trying. It ends up that we ended up going through IVF. And
what was going on with you?
Fortunate.
Did you ever get diagnosed with anything? Like you guys?
Yes, polycystic ovary. So PCOS. Yes.
Okay.
But we were really fortunate that the first time I did it took and I ended up with my twins. So this is very lucky.
Yeah. So let me just unpack that a little bit. So what was going on like culturally surrounding IVF? Like, what did you know about it? Who were you talking to? Was anybody like talking about it like they do now? I mean, so much has changed even in the past, almost 5 years since I've had this podcast, but what was the state of like the cultural, take on IVF and just assisted reproductive technology in general?
It was very different. So my twins, my oldest, are juniors in college. So they're 20. So this was 21 years ago. You did not talk about it with anyone. I had one friend who I talked about it with. I didn't talk about family. I didn't tell people. And at the time, it was like, it's interesting because I still don't talk about it a lot because that's still been my mentality. It's like, that's how it was just like thought of as different. And I don't know, like, you're worried your kids would think they're somehow different. Everything now it's like so mainstream.
Right.
But I remember like ducking in and out of the office. Like, as you know, you have to go to the office many, many times a week.
Totally.
And I'd go before work, like really early, and you'd hope you didn't see anyone. If you did, it was like an unwritten rule. Like, you wouldn't talk to them. You wouldn't say anything. You would definitely not say who you saw in an office. Like, it was like very discreet. You did everything on the down low. I would like go and look in the door first to make sure like I don't know anyone that's in there. Right.
Totally. Yeah. Wearing like a baseball hat and sunglasses.
Yes.
Like,
and not mention it. And so it all had to be done like really like this like whole like clandestine, like
totally
not telling anyone anything about it. So, and there's none of the social media, none of these support groups or anything. So it was like a very lonely journey. And, and if you're moody or don't feel good or you're doing shots or whatever, that difficulty, like no one knows about any of that. So you're really going through it alone. I mean, I had one friend who knew, and I talked about it with her. But besides that, like no one, like, I don't even think family, like maybe I like told my mom, but she still wasn't even going to ask a lot of questions because it was kind of like taboo. But like, I didn't say anything that anybody else. I just did it on my own. I'm like, just do it and, get to the place you want to be. And then you're, great. So in fact, even then I was like the whole thing, the process, and I was like very superstitious through it, everything. Like, I mean, I waited a really long time till I even told people, and I was pregnant with twins. So like I noticeably like,
right.
Like,
so you're going into work and stuff and like,
yes,
not saying
and didn't say anything to anybody. Yeah.
Yes. That's how it was. Right. So what about you and your husband? Like, how was he, and how were you guys able to support each other while you were going through it? I feel like it can go one of two ways. With me and my husband, it was really, really hard on us. But I've talked to so many other people that were like, oh, it really bonded us and brought us closer together. We were not that couple.
I think for my older kids, it was a little less difficult than when we talk about my third child, like as far as trying on us. Because my older kids, like, I think I was just determined I was going to do it. We were both like working, doing our own things, working at, like in our lives. And I kind of like just did it. Like it was just on the side, right? So I was just doing this kind of like, it was just another job that I was doing. I mean, I remember the difficulty was just him having like give shots or things like that when you have to have the big shot. Every other shot I could do, but like when you have to do like a big progesterone shot where I like could not, manage that one on my own. And like, there takes some trust and a leap of faith there. But, and the difficulty is I think he saw up until that point, the entire, whatever it is, year before that, where like, it was like disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, and like waiting for that shoe to drop every time I'd be like, it like, not pregnant again this month, not pregnant, so that piece of it. And I'm sure hormonally I was probably like somewhat of a mess. And I was very nervous because the whole procedure, like I didn't know a lot about it. Right. I had researched doctors. I knew about doctors, but there was like one renowned doctor here in Chicago. That's what I went to. But like, I didn't have a lot of information. I was like trying to get information as best I could. But
were you able to like Google stuff, or like, where were you getting the info at that point?
I mean, yes, a little. But I would just, I would ask the nurses, like, I could say, what's the amount and what are the things or whatever? And, how much should I take, and trying to like figure it out and trying to track it. I would keeping like charts on my own and things like that, like just to track everything. But it was just a different time. So going in, retrieval, it's like scary. You're going under, like, and I just very, they're a great office and they were helpful, but I just didn't have a lot of information. I didn't have a lot of people to go to. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to, or,
Totally makes sense. And Instagram obviously wasn't a thing either. Podcasts weren't really a thing, right? So tell me about when you guys did the transfer. Was it one embryo, or did you transfer two or more than two?
Actually, at the time they used to transfer three, but it was a very different situation because it was only when they had PDF. They didn't have CGH array, so they could only test for 5 chromosomes at the time.
Okay.
So standard protocol was like 2 to 3 embryos.
Okay.
Because they didn't have the same kind of like testing as they do.
Okay. That's so interesting. Yeah, totally. That makes sense. So you put 3 in and then found out what was it like when you got the call that you were pregnant?
And I remember, so like, I know people sometimes will like take tests on their own and things like that. I never did because I was
Me
so
either.
nervous.
Me too.
Yes. I was like, really, really? I mean, I kind of thought like my hormones kind of like, because it was twins right away, like were very extreme. Like my levels were like super high. So even the fact that they thought that it was probably like a multiple birth because of
Mm-hmm.
hormone levels and things like that once I
Yeah.
went back in. But yes, I mean, I think it was, obviously very, very excited, but I'm like just a cautiously optimistic person. Like I wasn't taking anything for granted, and which is why I still didn't share that like news or tell people like early
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, let's just make sure it's okay.
Right. Totally. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So like keep it close to the belt. It's almost like a
Yeah.
self-protective thing too. Like
Yes.
if you don't tell a lot of people, then it's just like, you don't have to
Mm.
go there if it doesn't work out or something. So
Yes.
how was your twin pregnancy?
It was terrible. I had an awful twin pregnancy.
Oh no. Tell me why.
Um,
What happened?
my water leaked. I was on a work. So this is why I ended up leaving the workforce and fairly abruptly. My water leaked at 20 weeks at a work dinner. And I ran to the hospital, like literally left in the middle of dinner. No one knew what was going on. All of a sudden I
Oh my
grabbed a
God.
taxi, no Uber at the time, grabbed a taxi. And I was like yelling to like get to the hospital as fast as possible.
Oh, scary. Were you terrified?
Yes. Oh yes. I mean, I knew this is not like a good thing. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very traumatic. I ended up overnight in the hospital waiting to hear what they would say, the news. And so it was like a just horrific, horrific first night. I ended up in the hospital then for that stint I was in for a week. Then they sent me home. I was home for, was it 7 more weeks? Then I was back in the hospital. So I ended up on emergency bed rest, and
Mm.
all the high risk doctors recommend I terminate the pregnancy because my water levels were low.
Oh my God. What did you think when you heard
Yes,
that?
yes, it was a major. It required a really major decision on our part, and right there's only a certain amount of time that I had that I was able to make that choice. And so it was a lot of pressure because I had to figure out like what to do. So then I ended up getting, I got a steroid shot. I somehow willed this by like I did not like leave my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I drank water, like tons and tons of water. I kept thinking that's gonna like help and keep
Mm-hmm.
water going. So it was just I was in the hospital, so I was having ultrasounds like every other day. Like I have more ultrasounds. I don't even know how many ultrasounds they had. They come in, they do the heartbeat monitor every single morning in the hospital. And yeah, it was just a really terrifying. People always ask like, well, what do you do? Weren't you bored? And I was so scared that I didn't have time to be bored. Like I couldn't focus on a TV show. I couldn't read a book. I couldn't do
Oh
anything. So I was like
God.
terrified. So I was in the
Yeah.
hospital for 6 weeks and then
Wow.
things seemed to be, I didn't go into, it's like kind of 48 hours, either go into labor or not. And they didn't.
Thank
So I
you.
went home, and then at 28 weeks, I was like, and I just wanted to get to the marker. They're like, and at the time too, like now babies can be born a little earlier, but like I needed to get to like 28 weeks was kind of like the key point. And I'm like, get to 28, and then after 28 to 30, and
Mm-hmm.
I get to 28 and my water like totally breaks, and I end up back in the hospital. But I made it for 6 more weeks in the hospital. They were born at 34 weeks.
Wow. That's
So
amazing.
yes, it was a pretty amazing story that I, did not,
Right.
don't take anything for granted because this was truly a
Totally.
miracle.
And did
Yeah,
they have to spend some time in the NICU then?
they did. So
Mm-hmm.
they were, my daughter was 3 pounds, 6 ounces. My son was 3 pounds, 14 ounces. So
Oh.
my daughter was there for 2 weeks and my son was there for 10 days. And then they sent me home with these, like, I would have been happy if they kept him longer. I was like, you're sending me home with like 4 pound baby. One, I also
Right.
was a mess. I had a C-section. I had been on bed rest for 3.5 months. I was not very mobile. Like it was hard. Like I was very nervous about even taking care of them. I ended up with an infection, my C-section. Like I hadn't walked a lot. I hadn't done anything. And then felt like I needed physical therapy afterwards. So
Mm-hmm.
I was very worried then about like also taking care of these like little preemie babies.
Totally. Absolutely. So again, like where were you finding information about that? Like about preemies and about NICU life and like who were you leaning on for support then? Because that's a really, really hard time. This episode is sponsored by Mosey Baby. If you are listening right now, you know that wanting a baby can be simple, but trying to conceive can be the most stressful thing in the world. But thanks to Mosey Baby, it doesn't have to be. Mosey Baby founders Maureen and Mark struggled to conceive for 2.5 years. When they couldn't find an easy and comfortable way to inseminate at home, they decided to make the product themselves, and that's how Mosey Baby was born. Created with insight from a fertility specialist, Mosey is the first patented syringe designed for home insemination and has been helping families inseminate privately at home since 2015. Before you spend thousands of dollars in a doctor's office, consider Mosey Baby and make a baby with love through insemination. Curious? Learn more about the Mosey Baby Kit and read some of the amazing stories from the Mosey community at try.moseybaby.com/infertileaf. Again, that's try.moseybaby, MOSIEBABY.com/infertileaf. Use code INFERTILEF for 15% off your order at checkout and join the 100,000 plus families who have included Mosey on their journeys to conceive. Thanks, Mosey Baby.
Yes. I had one friend who knew a woman that she worked with at her law firm who had twins who was on bed rest also with her twins, like ahead of me, and told me about like, do this and think about this and ask these questions. A very smart woman who like had these twins. Actually, she had twin girls on her own as a single mom. I mean, amazing story. And she was helping guide me. So I got it. I had actually no information about PPROM as far as like, early water breakage. Like I had really no information about that at all. I think I was trying to, and you're also careful. Like there's just so much I wanted to research. Also, like I wanted some information, but I didn't want too much information because the whole thing was really scary. And I feel like all I was going to get is like really negative.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
stats and everything like that. So, because this was very much against the odds. I had one doctor who was like, in my practice, not part of the high risk, but who, came in and did an ultrasound. He's like, I think you're going to be okay. I'm like, really? And so I was like, I'm going to go with that one.
Totally. I would have done the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I'll subscribe to that theory. Thank you.
Yeah. But
wow.
So yeah,
okay.
Not a lot of information as much as I am a researcher by nature.
Right.
Tried to get whatever I could, but there just wasn't like that much that you can really figure out.
That makes sense. So then tell me about when they came home and when did you guys start thinking, maybe we're not done building our family yet?
Oh, my husband was probably like, yes, we are done. And I mean, it took a very long time till I got to that point, honestly, because it was a lot. Preemie twins.
Yeah.
Everything was a blur the entire first year.
Yeah.
I remember they came home and my daughter like was impossible to feed. Like get her to take like 1 ounce of formula. You'd have to like undress her. She'd just keep falling asleep. So my friend who has older children, she's like, that is impossible. I cannot take an hour to feed a baby. There's no way. She came down. She lived in the suburbs at the time. I still lived in the city in Chicago. She came down. She's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I could not manage this. She's like, she came down to see how hard it was to feed her this baby. You had to undress her, take everything off, sit her upright, everything to take like 1 ounce. She's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I would go crazy.
Oh, wow.
And I was like documenting like everything they ate, when they slept, when they pooped, like everything. I charts and charts and charts to keep track of everything and how they were eating. So it was all consuming.
Totally.
And I was fortunate I had help, but even with help, it was like one person would have one baby, I had another, like, and my husband had a really crazy busy job. He wasn't around. So yes, I was definitely not on the road where I was like, oh, I was trying to recover. I was trying to get better. I was trying to, get my strength back. So everything was going on at once. And so I was not anywhere near thinking about.
Okay. So you said they're 20 years old now?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then fast forwarding again, when did the next,
I'd
part
say
of your
when
story
they were
happen?
here's what I thought with twins. I felt like I only got to experience everything once. So I think especially once like, kindergarten hit and I'm like, oh my gosh, they both left for school at the same time, even though it was like only a couple hours in the morning. But I was like, it's like, I want to experience everything more than once. And with twins, it's like, even though I was very fortunate. I have a boy and a girl and everything. My husband's like, we like hit the jackpot. We have a boy and a girl. Like what? It's like, oh, but I feel like it's like just one time I wanted another, like something did not feel complete in me. I don't know what it is.
Funny, Mara. I had the same exact thought cause I had secondary infertility and we had a healthy daughter. And then I was like, I'm just not done. I want to do this again. I want to like go through it all again.
Right. And I just did not feel like something was just missing. It was really like, I don't know how, but I knew like my family was not complete. And maybe it's because I have like all these friends and they had all had already third children and fourth children. And I was like, I just feel like, and I felt like for them, even it's like the two of them are just like this unit, like they needed another, baby in the family. So, but that one took a very, very long time. So that process, I honestly, I don't know how many times.
So you're doing IVF again?
I did IVF. Yeah. I don't even know how many times, to be honest. So I did many retrievals, many transfers. Then they got to the point where technology had the, PGA or whatever it is, PGA rate, where they could like test everything, all chromosomes. So after many, many years of like, and it was very, unfortunately also like consuming, because like here I have kids that you want to like actually be able to focus on, and they were miracles in themselves, but I was also like going through this like super arduous process of trying to have a third child. So then we decided that I had very poor lining and it was just never going to work. So it was not going to be my uterus. That decision was made. And I think, especially for my OBGYN, I think he's like, after the whole last thing, and I think it kind of just messed me up. I'm not a good carrier candidate.
Okay. So
we decided to go a surrogate route.
Okay.
And so luckily in one of my retrievals, and we had, done a couple of very good, like all perfect, embryos. And the ones that there was only one, then I had a few left. And then I started with one surrogate who unfortunately also did not work. She had didn't work the first time. Then we did another time. And then by the third time when we tried, I think it was 2 or 3, and she had a miscarriage, and that was like just devastating. She had to call me in the middle of the night. It was like horrendous on all parts. And then I realized to move to someone else because, as much as she was great or whatever, I just didn't want to keep going through that, obviously. And so we found another one.
Yes.
And that's it's a very big process. That's an administrative process. It's
were you working with an agency to find?
I had an agency who helped me find.
And did your law background come into play when you're dealing with all of this, the paperwork, the contracts and all that stuff?
Contracts, but there are all these things you have to think about that are like outside of any law I've ever practiced, right? Like that process is much more about like a little bit of a meeting of the minds. Like someone's got to be on the same, they have to want the same things out of the relationship going forward. Like there's just so many things that go into it and factors of finding the right person. And for someone who's a major, major control freak, it's difficult to give up that control. Like I'm generally like to manage everything.
Totally understand. Yes.
But I also think I was at the point where like, I kind of just wanted the baby and I really didn't care. Like for me, my pregnancy was horrible. I don't know why I wanted that again. Like it was not a fun experience. It was a very, very stressful, like terrifying experience for me. So I wanted the end result. So I knew it was our biological child from our embryos. I was like, great. I just want the end result of having a baby. And I kind of good with if someone else is a better, like she has like super easy pregnancy. She gets pregnant easily. She has easy pregnancies. She'd done this before for another family. She had her own 3 children, like fantastic. You are going to be a way better candidate. I mean, She literally gave birth to my third child and like checked out of the hospital like that same day. Like it was like nothing for her.
Oh my God.
Yes. I got the end. All I cared about was the end result.
Right.
And the fun part about that is I didn't tell anybody that we're having a baby, like literally till like 31 weeks.
Oh my God. How did you keep it a secret?
I'm pretty good at keeping things close to the chest and that. And that's another one because I had so many like bad experiences. I can think I'm like, okay, at 16 weeks, I'll tell me. I'm like, no, I'm just going to wait. Maybe at 18. And then I'm like 20 and then I'm at 24. So like, I just kept going on and on. And now I'm like, oh, this can kind of be like cool just to tell people when it's like, oh, and by the way, we're coming up with a baby. Like,
oh my God. What was the reaction?
Yeah. Well, my mom, I told a little bit beforehand, but not very much. Like maybe like 24, 28 weeks. And she's like, you didn't tell me all this time. The most fun was telling my older kids. So they were 9 years old at the time. And we have a video of telling them. And they were just like jumping up and down. My daughter's like, we're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby. And then she goes, I'm not going to be an only child. And she's like sitting next to her brother.
That's amazing.
It was great. And honestly, because of the age difference, I mean, not a planned age difference, but because of it, they were enamored with him and still are because of the difference. Like he's my, I feel like key to getting them to come home from college. Like all they want to do is come see their little brother and watch him the sports and be with him. Like I have this like draw for them. It's either I could have like a puppy, but they have like a little baby brother. So they were so enamored with him. And I mean, I don't think my daughter would like put him down. I was like, she was just carrying him everywhere. She would like wake up when he woke up and I want to make sure he's eating and everything. Like she made a special onesie from every single month that he turned a month older. She decorated and made a onesie for him for that month.
Oh my God. That's so great.
Yes. So he is the very fortunate child that he is like literally the center of like, he's got like, not just feels like he has like 4 parents pretty much because he's got like
totally
2 older siblings who are older and he's like the center of everybody's universe.
Right.
So he's truly the baby of the family.
Okay.
And then I knew, and the other reason I knew, like, I'm like, we are good. I feel like this is it. It's complete. Is that he is the kid who loves being the youngest. Like he never wanted a younger sibling ever. He likes being.
Yeah. He likes being the baby. Yeah. So it all worked out.
Totally.
Amazing. Well, tell me before we talk about Inspiro Tequila, your company, which again is so awesome and what you're doing is so great. Let's talk about, if somebody's listening that's like new to this world, you were going through this a while ago, but you're so well versed in it and everything. What would you say to somebody now that like you wish you knew then that you know now about going through infertility, about going through IVF, about surrogacy, all of it?
Right. Well, I'd say first with IVF is ask a lot of questions. I think, because I'm generally inquisitive and because I have a legal background, I would go in and like ask a lot, especially going through like, okay, I'm like, wait, what are you doing? And why are you changing this? And what are you doing? Like, I feel like most of them, it's going to feel very just like you're kind of part of a, big, large, like industrial process that you go through.
Yeah.
And don't feel like you can like advocate or ask questions for yourself because they kind of just give you, here's your regimen, here's what you do. And I would say, and because it's an intimidating experience and all that, like ask questions and advocate for yourself, find out. I was very on top of that, especially once I was going through it like again and again. And I had an idea. I'm like, well, why are you changing this? What's the mix here? And why are you doing this? And like, and I think that's really important is to like get a handle on it. Cause it's like very easy just to follow, like, here's your directions and just follow. And I would advocate for yourself and ask questions. So when I've had friends later going through or family members, I'm like, oh, is there a reason they gave you this medication? This one, like you do the research on your own also.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is now that there are people out there in support groups, like there's someone, it doesn't matter what you're doing or what your process or what you're dealing with. Someone's dealt with it before.
Right.
And you can find them. That's why you have groups. Yeah. That's why you have your group, right? So you can find people and get information.
Exactly.
At the time. And it's not this like taboo subject matter anymore. It's kind of like there are lots of different routes to building a family. And now they're like, appreciated and applauded. And it just was a different circumstance when I, was going through this process. So I'm glad that now there's more availability. I figured most of these things out just on my own.
Definitely.
And you don't have to now.
tell me about starting this company. Why tequila and why now? And how did you do it? And tell me all the things. It's so awesome.
Yes. Thank you. So yeah, listen, I was home for many years because I was home when I had my twins. And then I had a child 9.5 years later. So I was home and out of the workforce for like 16 years. I think once they started high school and I realized like, oh my gosh, they're both going to high school and like, then they're going to go to college at the same time. That's going to be like a really difficult, like, I think it's time. And I'd always thought about starting my own company. It's always been in the back of my head. I probably just, listened to too much How I Built This or,
Totally.
and watched too much Shark Tank, but I knew I wanted to start my own company. I knew I didn't want to work for someone else anymore. I knew it was going to be in food or beverage. I'm like a super consumer. I love taste testing everything. I order everything. I try everything. Like I'm just a major like foodie and consumer, taste testing different things, mostly in the better for you category. So gluten free and non dairy and all these things. So the reason it became tequila is because tequila's been my adult beverage of choice for many years. And because I didn't want sugar and carbs and I'm gluten free and all these things. So I started drinking tequila. Then I started researching the category and learning more and trying different tequila brands. I did not know that everything I was drinking had additives in it. So like the vast majority of tequila.
You were telling me this in Chicago and I was like, what? That's crazy. Like I never knew any of that.
Pretty much all the major brands, all the big brands, everything I was drinking and knew. Like, oh, it has like coloring and flavoring and aspartame and sorbitol and all these things. I was like, I don't eat those in my food. So I don't want them in my drink either. So really, I searched for an additive-free brand. I wanted one that like appealed to me as the consumer. I didn't find that. So I'm like, I'm going to start a tequila company. I mean, I say it flippantly. It took a lot of research. Listen, you can go into any industry, you can learn something, but like I dove in. Once I said I was going to do it, I tried to learn as much as possible. Just like I had to do and navigate and figure out and research on my own to figure out, the fertility process. I did the same here. And so I just dove in, learned about the production process, learned about the spirits industry overall, took a course offered by the CRT, the governing body in Mexico, and became certified in the production and history of tequila, read books on tequila, reached out to industry executives. A big piece of it is I knew who this consumer was, and it was a consumer like me and a thoughtful female consumer who cares about what she eats and drinks and the brands she supports. So everything behind it really had to resonate to that consumer. So from the bottle design that you saw, I wanted to be a bottle that I would want to display on my bar. I wanted a bottle that was easy to hold and pour, so slender in the middle. I wanted a taste profile that was really approachable and easy to drink tequila, but without using additives. So getting some of those sweeter tasting notes, but without using additives to get them. I wanted to innovate a little bit. So I was like, had this idea, like, let's age tequila in rosé wine barrels. So we have a Rosa Reposado, that's first tequila aged in rosé wine barrels.
That's so cool.
Because I'd never been in the industry before, I could look at it from like kind of a fresh set of eyes. And I'd been in industries in my previous life and just like this one where women are traditionally underrepresented. So I thought if I was going to do something and go back into the workforce, I wanted to be able to make an impact. And so I thought we could do that by bringing a female perspective to an industry where there are not a lot of female voices. So that is why we're distilled, owned, and led by women. So everyone from our master distiller in Mexico down the line, I really just wanted to bring, hopefully something a little bit different to a category. I mean, there are some women now and more women getting in, but just to really, there's still not enough. Like even if there's one or two other brands, there are not enough.
I love that it's all female founded and led. And you were telling me about the distillery. Is that the right word for it? Like where it's manufactured? Is it in Mexico?
Yes. So
okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
All tequila that's 100% agave tequila is manufactured and bottled in areas of Mexico. It's like champagne has to be done in appellation of origin. So any tequila that says 100% agave, it is produced, distilled, bottled, everything, and then brought into the country. So I have a distillery in Mexico who produced it. I brought in my own master distiller. So I found a legendary master distiller, Ana Maria Romero Mena. She created her taste profiles. There are not that many female master distillers. So I picked a distillery that would let me bring in my own master distiller. So I found actually my master distiller separate from my distillery because I wanted her to create I wanted her to bring it to life, like what I was envisioning. And she did.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to Mara for sharing her story. Guys, I'm always looking for more stories. So if you have anything you'd like to share, you can always DM me at infertileafstories, or you can email me at infertileafstories@gmail.com. I'm pretty booked up through the end of the year, but we will start recording some new stuff in the beginning of 2024. So hit me up if you have something interesting you'd like to share. My opinion is that all stories are important and all stories matter. So let me know what you've been going through. Also, check out Fertility Rally. Our website is fertilityrally.com. We have monthly and annual memberships. We have 5 to 6 support groups per week, guys. That's a lot. And you're welcome to come to any and all of them. So if you're looking for a safe space, if you're looking for a badass community, if you're looking for a website full of resources and videos, IRL events, virtual events, we have got it all. It's what I wish I had when I was going through it. So check us out at Fertility Rally. And of course, as always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Talk to you guys next time.